Barron Trump's unanticipated address the day was electric with expectation outside the nation's capital. The atmosphere crackled with a blend of exhilaration and uncertainty as thousands gathered for Donald Trump's second inaugural address. Amid the cheers, waving flags, and the roar of a captivated crowd, the Trump family stood united on the stage, a picture of strength and unity amid an increasingly divided political landscape. Donald Trump, commanding the podium with his familiar booming cadence, laid out his bold vision for the next 4 years. His speech, designed to reassure his supporters and rally the nation, echoed through the vast halls of the inauguration venue. Yet, even as his words reverberated across the sea of faces, an undercurrent of tension persisted, a tension that had been building quietly beneath the surface of an America deeply split by political and cultural fault lines. As Trump finished his address and stepped back, a wave of applause surged over the crowd. Cameras captured every moment, zooming in on his family's expressions of pride and composure. Melania Trump, ever poised, stood beside her youngest son, Barron. At 18, Barron had grown into an imposing figure, nearly 7 feet tall, a striking contrast to the delicate balance of his father's larger-than-life persona. Always the quiet one, Barron had spent most of his life in the background, absorbing the turbulence of politics from afar. Then, as the applause began to dwindle and the ceremony settled into a measured calm, something unexpected occurred. Barron, dressed in a sharply tailored black suit that spoke of both maturity and quiet determination, stepped forward. His movement was subtle at first, a tentative shift in a moment of stillness. The crowd's initial cheers softened into murmurs of curiosity. Even his own family appeared momentarily taken aback. Donald Trump's eyes, a mix of surprise and cautious curiosity, flickered towards his son as Barron approached the podium. Taking a deep breath, Barron adjusted his tie and leaned forward. The microphones caught the soft sound of his measured breath, and then, with a calm yet resolute tone, he began, "Today is not only a new chapter for my father or for our country, it is a moment for reflection for all of us." His voice, though quiet, carried a weight that immediately silenced any lingering doubts. "I have spent much of my life watching from the sidelines, witnessing the promises made and the disappointments that followed. For too long, anger and fear have defined our interactions, and in doing so, have driven us apart." The audience listened, rapt. Barron continued slowly, each word measured as if he were weighing its impact. "I ask you all to look within and ask yourselves, what kind of country do we truly want to be? Not one where our differences tear us apart, but one where we find common ground through understanding and genuine dialogue." His eyes swept across the crowd, seeking out those who felt unheard, those who had silently borne the brunt of political strife. There was a pause, a heavy, collective exhale, before Barron pressed on. "We are all responsible for the state of this nation. The future we inherit is not dictated solely by the powerful, but by the choices each of us makes every day. Change begins with listening, with speaking honestly, and with reaching out to one another even when it's difficult." His tone shifted, growing even more personal. "I know what it feels like to be marginalized by the very systems meant to uplift us. I have seen how policies, no matter how grand in their promises, often leave everyday people behind. And I have also seen that silence in the face of injustice only deepens the divides between us." His gaze held the intensity of someone who understood both privilege and pain, a blend rarely seen in the public eye. The audience, initially skeptical, began to lean in as Barron's words sank in. In the crowd, a mix of emotions played across faces: surprise, contemplation, and even the first flickers of hope. The young generation, who had long felt alienated by the harsh rhetoric of partisan politics, found themselves nodding quietly, as if recognizing their own struggles in his reflective tone. Barron's speech was not bombastic. It was not designed to rally the masses with grandiose promises. Instead, it was an invitation, a quiet challenge to each person to look at themselves and consider what role they might play in healing a fractured nation. "I am not here to claim that I have all the answers," he said, "but I am here to say that if we can begin with a simple conversation, if we can choose to listen instead of shout, perhaps we can start to mend the rifts that have divided us for so long." As he spoke, the silence that had engulfed the crowd was not empty, it was filled with the raw potential of change. Every pause, every deliberate inflection in his voice, resonated like a plea for unity. The cameras captured every nuance, and soon the speech would be dissected and discussed across social media, in newsrooms, and in living rooms nationwide. When Barron concluded his remarks, he left the stage with no grand finale of applause, only a profound, lingering silence that gradually blossomed into a measured, thoughtful clapping. It wasn't the raucous cheer of a political rally, but the subdued, reflective approval of a crowd that had just witnessed something transformative. In the days that followed, Barron's unexpected speech became a flashpoint in national discourse. Clips of his measured words and the earnest expression on his face flooded social media, sparking debates and inspiring grassroots movements. Young people, in particular, found a voice in his message. On college campuses, discussions ignited about leadership, responsibility, and the possibility of genuine change. In small towns and big cities alike, community forums sprang up, echoing the sentiment that change begins with the individual. Critics were quick to question whether a young man, raised in the lap of privilege, could truly understand the struggles of everyday Americans. Yet, even his harshest detractors could not ignore the sincerity that permeated his address. Prominent voices in media and public life weighed in. Some hailed him as a beacon of hope in turbulent times, while others dismissed his words as naive. Still, the undeniable impact of his message was evident. It sparked conversations that reached far beyond the confines of a ceremonial stage. Within his own family, the fallout was equally complex. While some members had long viewed Barron as the quiet, reserved one who preferred to stay in the background, his decision to speak so openly was seen as a courageous step towards redefining his legacy. Even Donald Trump, known for his relentless self-promotion, offered little public comment on his son's speech, leaving the interpretation of the moment up to the public and pundits alike. As the nation processed Barron's words, a broader movement began to take shape. In cities like Cincinnati and San Diego, community leaders organized meetings to bridge the gap between disparate political groups. On platforms like TikTok and Instagram, young citizens shared their reflections, using hashtags that celebrated the voice of unity. Debates on cable news and podcasts dissected every nuance of his address, fueling a renewed interest in political discourse that was both critical and hopeful. Barron's speech, with its quiet call for introspection and accountability, came to symbolize more than just a moment of political novelty. It represented a challenge to the status quo. It reminded the nation that real change requires more than top-down leadership. It demands that each person, regardless of their station, take responsibility for the future. The future is ours to build, he had said, but it starts with each of us taking that first step towards understanding. In that moment of vulnerability and truth, Barron Trump emerged from the shadow of a towering family legacy to become a voice in his own right. His address, delivered in a tone that was both humble and determined, resonated with those who had long been overlooked by the clamor of partisan politics. It was a moment that, regardless of one's political beliefs, forced the nation to pause and reflect on its own values. As the inaugural ceremony faded into the annals of history, the lasting impact of that day was measured not in partisan victories or political slogans, but in the collective awakening of a community yearning for unity. Barron's words became a catalyst for small, tangible changes, a reminder that sometimes the most profound shifts begin with a simple conversation. And so, as people continued to debate, discuss, and digest the implications of his speech, one thing remained clear: the future of the nation depended on the willingness of its people to listen, to learn, and to work together. In an era defined by division and discord, Barron Trump's unexpected address offered a glimmer of hope. A call to rise above entrenched differences and forge a path toward a more inclusive, understanding society. As the nation moved forward, the question lingered: would Barron's message inspire lasting change, or would it fade into the background of an ever-changing political landscape? Only time would tell. But for that one day at the inauguration, a quiet voice had spoken loudly enough to remind everyone that unity is not achieved by decree alone, but by the cumulative power of each individual's commitment to a better tomorrow.